Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff. The ground beneath you is crumbling, and below there's nothing but fire. That's a terrifying image of Jonathan Edwards paints in his famous sermon entitled Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. But why did the sermon make people cry, scream, and beg for mercy? And why is it still talked about today? Welcome to Mima's Monologue, where we explore the power of words and their impact on history and modern life. I am Mima, and today we're diving into one of the most intense and controversial sermons ever preached. Get ready because this one is fire and brimstone at its finest. Imagine dangling over a pit of fire, held up by nothing but a thin thread, and that thread could snap at any moment. This terrifying image isn't from a horror film, it's from one of the most famous sermons in American history, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God by Jonathan Edwards. But why did the sermon cause people to weep, scream, and beg for mercy? Let's find out. Let me give you a brief summary of the sermon entitled Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. So this sermon preached in 1741 during the Great Awakening, a time of religious revival. Edwards paints a terrifying picture of God's wrath, describing sinners as helpless, dangling over hell, saved only by God's mercy. So what his goal is that to awaken the congregation and make them fear for their souls so they would repent and seek salvation. Alright, so what makes Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God such a powerful sermon? Well, first, Jonathan Edwards goes all in on fear so that he does not just warn people about sin. He makes them feel like they're already at the edge of hell, barely hanging on by a thread, and the only thing stopping them from falling is that the God's mercy. So what really stands out is his imagery. He compares sinners to a spider dangling over fire, a slippery slope, and a bowstring about to snap. It's intense, but that's the point. He wanted to shock people into changing. And honestly, it worked. People literally cried and screamed during the sermon. Edwards also uses repetition and rhythm to build tension. He keeps hammering the idea that judgment could come at any moment, making his audience feel like they had zero control over their fate. That ties into predestination, a big belief during the Great Awakening. So basically, the idea that only God decides who gets saved. So whether you agree with Edwards or not, you have to admit his words were effective. This was not just a sermon, it was an emotional experience that made people rethink their entire lives. So the question now is that why does this sermon still matter today? I mean, it was written in 1741, but if you think about it, the way Edwards uses fear to persuade is something we still see all the time. For example, look at media and politics. A lot of messages today use fear, whether it's about climate change, health crisis, or social issues, to get people to take action. Edwards did the same thing, just with religion. So he made people feel like they were in immediate danger, so they would change their behavior. And then there's the whole idea of judgment and consequences. We might not talk about hell as much now, but the concept of being one mistake away from disaster, that's everywhere. Think about cancel culture. One wrong move, and suddenly you're out. In a way, it's similar to Edward's message. You're always at risk, and only something greater than yourself can save you. Even in psychology, fear based motivation is a real thing. Some people change because of hope, others because of fear. Edwards just happened to be a master of the fear approach. So, yeah, the sermon might feel extreme, but the way it influences people, that's still very real today. Alright, so my honest thoughts is that this sermon is intense, especially when you read the text. You would really feel the same way. So Edwards does not just preach, he shakes people to their core. The imagery is powerful, and I can totally see why people were crying and screaming when they heard it. Personally, I think it's a fascinating example of how words can control emotion and behavior. But at the same time, I can see how the fear based approach might not work for everyone today. A lot of people respond better to messages of hope and redemption rather than pure fear. Would I recommend it? If you're into history, religion, or persuasive writing, absolutely yes. It's a classic. But if you don't like extreme fire and brimstone preaching, it might feel overwhelming. So yeah, final rating for me is 4/5. It's dramatic, effective, and still relevant today, but definitely not for the faint of heart. So all in all, that's Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, a sermon that proves just how powerful words can be. Whether you find it inspiring or terrifying, there's no denying that Jonathan Edwards knew how to make people listen. But what do you think? Is fear an effective way to change people's behavior? Or do we respond better to hope? Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and share for more deep dives into literature and history. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning the power of words. Bye!